There's a lot of concern about the future of energy in Bermuda. Times are changing rapidly, and new realities are shaping our economy. There's a lot of talk, and everyone has an opinion about how we create a more sustainable power system, about their bills and rising costs, and that's understandable. But what's the truth about where we are, about where we're going, and how we get there? What does our energy future look like? First, let's look at where we are. For over 100 years, BELCO has supplied electricity to the people of Bermuda. We've kept pace with technologies and advancements in infrastructure. But now, things are changing so quickly, we need to adapt to ensure we have the kind of energy future that Bermuda demands. Much of our infrastructure is old and under stress, so we're doing the work to modernize it. Our old and now overburdened infrastructure simply wasn't designed to meet today's demands. Our engines are inefficient and cables are wearing out. 25% of our underground cables are more than 60 years old, and an additional 15% are more than 50 years old. With infrastructure improvements, we're evolving the grid to allow for more distributed generation and renewable input. In addition to upgrading our transmission and distribution lines, we need to replace 50% of our generating capacity in order to ensure a reliable, safe, and cost-effective electricity supply into the future. Having outlived its useful life, our current infrastructure is largely inefficient. It adds substantially to operating costs that further burden you, the consumer. So, we all know that Bermuda's energy rates are high, but why? What goes into our rates? Electricity is measured in kilowatt hours. That's a way to measure energy use in an hour. Bermuda's average cost of electricity per kilowatt hour is 39 cents. That's one of the highest of any in our peer group, a group of similar, small islands around the world where the average is 33 cents. So, to get rates back in line with similar countries elsewhere, our long-term goal is to reduce prices by 6 cents per kilowatt hour. That is something we're working towards because it's the right thing to do for Bermuda, but lowering rates is also a goal of the regulatory authority, and it's a stated aim of the government.
Far too many Bermudians are struggling to make ends meet, and one of the main drivers of our high cost of living is the price of electricity.
In 2016, the Electricity Act was introduced, primarily to regulate the local power industry and help prepare Bermuda's energy sector for the future. The regulatory authority is responsible for ensuring that the energy sector runs effectively and that services are reliable, efficient, adequate, and safe. And they have a role to play in both energy pricing and competitive generation. They govern our customer rates, approving increases and decreases in energy costs, and they're overseeing the introduction of competitors. All in all, a primary aim is to protect the interest of consumers in terms of prices and affordability. But how do we get here? What else goes into our high energy prices? To get a handle on that, we need to understand how our electrical system works. Like any electrical system, we have power generation. That's how we produce energy. Then there's transmission and distribution, which includes branch lines that deliver electricity, and house lines which connect you, the consumer, to the grid. Next, we need to understand how demand affects production, because energy usage over the course of a day isn't constant, and how this is handled plays a large part in energy costs. First, there's baseload. That's the minimum level of demand on an electrical grid over a span of time. It's the amount needed to provide power to components that keep running at all times, like, say, your refrigerator. Additionally, we also have peak load, which is a time of high demand. Essentially, the difference between the base demand and the highest demand. These are the regular spikes in demand, usually for only shorter durations that happen on a daily basis. Dryers, air conditioners, and televisions are all examples of things that you use that contribute to peak demand over the course of an average day. And so to the rate. Well, to meet demand, we have a set of largely fixed operational costs which keep the business running. We take all of our costs and divide them over the number of kilowatt hours sold. That's our rate. So the same cost over fewer kilowatt hours means higher rates. In terms of the costs that are out of our immediate control, one of the largest is fuel tax. As you can see, since 2015, the amount of fuel tax we collect on the government's behalf has effectively doubled. So that's what goes into the cost of energy production. In addition, there are a number of key factors which together affect these rates and keep energy prices high. First, our population has decreased quite dramatically in recent years. That affects demand. With fewer people, there's less need for energy. Right now, there are over 1.6 million square feet of office space sitting empty in Hamilton. That's the equivalent of 14 buildings the size of the ACE building. That's a lot of space with no need for electricity.
Simply, with fewer consumers, there are fewer people to share the cost to produce the minimum amount of electricity we need.
Same cost, over fewer kilowatt hours, means higher rates. For the past 8 years, demand has been falling. From a peak of 123 megawatts in 2010, we're now down to 103 megawatts this year. That's an alarming decline in demand. Less demand means higher costs for everyone. And that's before we factor in peak load. During the summer months, peak load is between 6 and 9 p.m. That's when we have to bring the more costly and inefficient supplemental generators online to cover spikes in demand. They run on diesel, and it costs more to ramp those up to meet demand than it does to run the baseload generators that provide most of our electricity. An increase in the population will help increase demand, as will new developments, like new large hotels, and more widespread adoption of electric vehicles requiring lots of the power we generate will help to lower energy prices. With increased demand, the cost to generate and distribute electricity will be spread over more customers, and prices will come down for everyone. But that will take time. We also have to work to lower the cost of producing energy now. More efficient machinery and a modernized grid will help, but we also have to streamline our operations. We're managing this process by reviewing spending on overhead and introducing measures that don't impact our current operational personnel. Our goal is to streamline operations while minimizing the impact on our people. Whilst maintenance and upgrades are continual, overhauling our energy systems will be a step-by-step process. With recent regulatory approval, much-needed upgrades are finally now underway. In March 2018, the regulatory authority gave BELCO the go-ahead to build the vital new North Power Station. The North Power Station is a dual-fuel, high-efficiency generation plant capable of producing 56 megawatts of new capacity from 4 new engines. The new plant will be supplemented by a cutting-edge battery energy storage system, which will shift reserve power from being held inefficiently on running engines to being stored within the batteries. These massive batteries, with an output capacity of 10 megawatts over 30 minutes, will ensure continued high reliability of electricity supply, providing reserve services while saving costs by burning less fuel. We expect these batteries to save $2 million per year on fuel. This is better for the environment and will reduce running hours on operating engines. In addition to this, ongoing improvements to the grid's distribution and transmission lines will improve reliability, reduce rates, and expand grid capacity. Our current plan represents the most cost-effective approach in addressing the risks of our aging infrastructure while enhancing the island's environmental profile and lowering electricity costs to the consumer. We are working hard to provide Bermuda with cleaner, more resilient, and affordable energy. We are taking action now to become a stronger, leaner utility built to serve Bermuda for another 100 years.